Good day everyone. For this video, we are going to be discussing about interest between dates. Specifically, we are going to cover and identify and illustrate the difference between ordinary and exact interest. We're also going to illustrate the difference between actual and approximate time, and then finally we're going to solve word problems involving ordinary and exact interest as well as actual and approximate time and a combination of the four. Okay, so to first discuss about ordinary and exact interest, for ordinary and exact interest, instead of expressing or instead of using our unit of time in terms of the number of years, the term or the time that will going to be used for computing the interest will now be expressed in the number of days. So it will be different from what we have from our previous discussion on simple interest, since the term that we're now going to be using is in terms of the number of days. So what would be the difference between ordinary and exact interest? So for ordinary interest, the assumed number of days in a year would be equal to 360 days in a year. So the formula will now be transformed into the new formula given the ordinary interest I sub O, and that would be equal to P, which is the principal, multiplied by R, which is the rate of interest, multiplied by the term T, which would now be equal to the computed number of days divided by 360. However, for exact interest, instead of dividing the number of days by 360, it is now assumed that there are 365 days in a year. Hence, our formula will now be transformed into the exact interest I sub E, and that would be equal to P again as the principal multiplied by R, the rate of interest, multiplied by the term or the number of days divided by 365. So let us look at the difference between the ordinary and exact interest. So for ordinary and exact interest, we know that the ordinary interest is greater than the exact interest. And if a given interest is not specified in a given word problem, it is assumed that the interest that was not specified is considered as the ordinary interest. Okay, so let's learn more about ordinary and exact interest using the word problems that we have here. So for our first word problem, we need to find the ordinary interest on 5,500 pesos for 95 days at 7 4/5% simple interest. So we're going to be using the formula that we have for ordinary interest, and we're going to be substituting 5,500 pesos to our principal P, our 7 4/5% to our rate of interest R, and then finally this 95 days will be substituted to the number of days here. From what you've learned from our discussion about simple interest, we need to first express this given rate of interest in decimal form before we proceed to multiplying the three values that we have there, which is the principal, the rate of interest, and then the term, or in this case the number of days divided by 360. If you successfully and correctly computed for this given values or multiply these given values, the correct answer would be equal to 178.75 pesos. So the ordinary interest accumulated for this amount, which is 5,500 pesos for 95 days at 7 4/5 simple interest, is 178.75. How about for exact interest? So for number 2, we're going to be dealing about finding the exact interest on 7,700 pesos for 150 days at 10 1/4% simple interest. So here we're going to be using the formula that we have earlier. So the difference would now be, instead of dividing the number of days by 360, we're now going to be dividing it by 365. And as you've seen earlier, so we'll have this value. So we'll have 7,700 pesos. So that would be the principal. Our rate of interest is 10 and 1/4%. So for those who have forgotten, this would be equal to 10.25%. And changing this to decimal form, simply we could just divide this by 100 or move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So we'll have 1, 2. We will now multiply the principal P, the rate of interest, and the new value that we have here, which is 0.1025. So the percent is removed there now. And if you have done that correctly, the final answer would be equal to 324.349351. So I've shown here all of the digits that are given in my calculator. But for our final answer, we could just accept 324.35 pesos. So that would be the interest accumulated. Take note, that is not the final amount. But since we're only looking for the exact and ordinary interest, we didn't compute for the final amount or the maturity value. But for that case, you just add the principal and the interest for you to get the final amount or the maturity value. Okay, so let us now talk about another concept that we're going to be covering for this session, and that would be about actual and approximate time. So for actual and approximate time, for actual time, the exact or actual number of days is given for the given month that you're going to be computing for. While for the approximate time, it is considered that all months within a year contain 30 days. So in our previous word problem, the actual or even the approximate time was already given since you only have the total. It could either be that given 95 days or 150 days. However, for problems involving actual and approximate time, you might need to compute for the number of days specifically. And if it's denoted as actual time, so you're going to use the exact or actual number of days. But if it's approximate time, it will now be considered as the months containing 30 days. So even if it's February, it will contain 30 days. So let us now look at a few word problems so that we could differentiate and learn more about actual and approximate time. So for this word problem, find the actual and approximate time from March 23 to October 16, 2010. So in this case, we have here the table. So for actual days, after March 23, there will be only 8 days remaining since there are 31 days for March. However, if it's approximate days, since there are 30 days for March and it's considered as each month containing 30 days, there will only be 7 left. For the succeeding month, so you have there April containing 30 days actually, and for 30 days approximately. However, when we move to May, for the actual days, it will be 31, while if it's approximate days, it would be equal to 30. And you use those concepts or those definitions differentiating actual and approximate days. So if it's October 16, 2010 up until March 8 to March 23 to October 16, there would be 207 days for the actual days and 203 days for the approximate days. Okay, so as you can see here, actual time would be a bit longer as compared to the approximate time. So there would be an effect there when you compute for the interest as well. Okay, so let's have another word problem for us to be familiar with actual and approximate time. So in this case, we are given with a problem and we need to find the actual and approximate time from January 15, 2012 to September 28, 2012. So in this case, as you can see, since there are 31 days in January, there would be 16 days for the actual time, while there would be only 15 days remaining for the approximate time. in this case, since the actual time for February, since it's a leap year, so it would contain 29 days. However, if it's approximate time, it will have 30 days. And so on for the other months up until September 28. So since we need to compute for the actual and approximate time until September 28, 2012, so we'll now have that value, which is 28. So it's simply just counting the number of days and simply just subtracting if you're on the first month for your given word problem or scenario. And take into account that for actual time, it is the exact time, while for approximate time, there would be 30 days for each month, even February. So in this case, again, the actual time would be a bit greater as compared to the approximate time, since we'll now have 257 days for the actual time, while 253 days would be for the approximate time. Okay. So notice that assuming that there are only 30 days in January, the remaining days for this month, specifically for the approximate time, is only 15 days. Okay, so let us now look at other word problems still. So we need to find the actual and approximate time from May 15, 2011 to January 20, 2012. So here we have 250 and 245. Okay, and for our fourth word problem, find the actual and approximate time from October 8, 2013 to May 10, 2014. Okay, so I leave it up to you to identify each days that would be given for each month, but for the final answer, that would be 204 and 202. You could use this word problem as an exercise to check the correct number of days from each month from October 18, 2013 to May 10, 2014. So you could list down the number of months, you could list down the actual time, and you could list down the approximate time here and compare them. Approximate time. Okay, so you could make a table there from the different months that you have. Okay, so let us now move to the last part of our session, this for this video, and that would be interest between dates combining the ordinary and exact interest to actual and approximate time. So if you're computing for the ordinary interest for the actual time, you need to take note of the divisor that you're going to be using for the term. While for exact interest, you need to take note of the other divisor, which is 360 and 365 respectively for ordinary and exact interest. In terms of computing the number of days, you need to also consider the difference between the actual time and the approximate time. So for our definition, if it's ordinary interest computed for actual time, we have a specific term or another word, or we use the term banker's rule, and this is used by banks in computing the interest on saving deposits. So if you're inclined to look into your saving deposits, the interest and the actual time, or the time used there, would be the ordinary interest and actual time. Okay, so what else? So let us now try solving this word problem to check how the actual time affects the ordinary interest and the exact interest. So for our word problem, find the interest using the four methods on 25,000 pesos at 5% from August 2, 2012 to November 27, 2012. So in this case, we have the table for the actual and approximate time. So since there are 31 days for August, there would be 29 days left, while if it's approximate time, there would only be 28 days left. So for September, there will be 30 days, October 31 days, up until November 27, that would be equal to 27 days left. Since approximate time contains 30 days for each month, you'll have these values. So take note, for actual time, we'll use 117 for the number of days, while for the approximate time, we'll use 115. Okay, so how will that affect our computation for the ordinary and exact interest. So for our ordinary interest, we'll have the divisor or the term that would be divided by 360, while for exact interest, it will be divided by 365. So let us now look at the formula for each of the given interest and for the actual and approximate time. So in this case, for ordinary interest, at actual time, we'll have 25,000 multiplied by 0.05. That would be our rate of interest, which is 5%. And that again would be multiplied by 117, which is our actual time, divided by 360. Hence, the interest that will be accumulated would be equal to 406.25 pesos. While for approximate time, we'll now have the difference would be the term that we have there, and that would be 115, which is your approximate time, divided by 360. For your interest, that would now be equal to 399.3055556, or simply 399.31 pesos. So, how will now the actual and approximate time affect the exact interest? So again, we'll use the given number of days for the actual and approximate time. So the formula that we have there would be still the formula for the exact interest. Substituting the values, we still have 25,000 pesos and 5% for the principal and rate of interest respectively. While for the actual interest, the exact interest in actual time will now have 400 pesos 0.6849315, or simply 400 pesos 0.68. And for the exact interest in approximate time, will have 393.84 or 393.8356164 pesos, or simply 393.84 pesos. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you very much, and see you on our next video and our next discussion. Bye everyone.